are they hiding? Let's get trail going. Look at that. Okay, if that's our sun, it looks huge. And I can't understand how the sun's light, like I can look at that with my naked eye and it doesn't hurt that badly. And the sun looks really tiny to me as well. I don't know, it just looks bigger, but I don't even know what I'm saying. Just zoom me out and just look at what it's doing. Look at that behind the clouds. You guys see that? See? Right there. Like that looks no bigger than a moon. You can see it clearly. What in the world is that? Is that even the sun? Look at that. Look at that. Is that even the sun? Look at that. That just doesn't seem right, you guys. Look at that. Look at that. That looks like a little disc in the sky. I've got it on my car visor at the top, so that's what's like. It acts as a barrier from the light. What's going on with our sun? Just a little bit of cloud cover and you can like make out the entire sun very clearly. The perfect sphere. Like it's just, I don't know, guys. I don't remember just a little bit of cloud cover being able to show us a perfect circle of the sun. This is at 5 roughly. Eastern Standard Time. Let's see how far it is from setting. What is that? That cannot be the sun. Is that our sun? Look, that's just like a little bit of cloud cover. And it completely blocks out the sun's light and you can see this ball. Like look, see, okay, it's just coming out. It's almost like it's reflecting light or something. What in the world? Is it getting dimmer? Do you think the sun is getting dimmer? That's why it only takes a little bit of cloud cover to block it out. I don't know, you guys are probably so bored right now. It's been like 4 minutes of your wasted time. This is not waste, guys, this is research. Something is not right for us guys, and we're gonna figure out what it is. And I'm probably blinding you because it's blinding me right now. Okay, well there's the sun, or whatever it is. Thanks for listening to my ramble, my rant. Jesus.
Hello friends, it's Saturday about 10:20 at night, and it's May the 20th. And pretty much from the second video that I made onward, about 6 months ago, maybe it's been a little more than that now, time flies, Most of you have been questioning why the sun is white, and so I thought maybe we could look into this a little bit. Notice the first thing comes up with why is the sun white instead of yellow? Ask an astronomer, is the sun yellow or is it white? Interesting, they have kind of a sun petal kind of look back here. Astronaut taking a space selfie with the sun visible on the left. Huh, so even in space, this happens? I've heard multiple sources say the sun is white, that it just looks yellow because the Earth's atmosphere is scattering the blue light. I've heard in other places that the sun is yellow because of its position in the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. Which is it? It can't both be yellow and white at the same time, or can it? Right away they explain the wavelength scale that it ranges from and the colors that it produces, and it says when you mix all these colors together you get white, and that's why white is the true color of the sun. And I remember this being said that when you take a prism and you put it in direct sunlight, you can find all of the different colors of the rainbow. But see, that's not really the question, is it? The question is we remember the sun as being this yellow ball in the sky. When people draw pictures when they are children, they often draw a blue sky, white clouds, and a yellow sun. We always remember the sun as being yellow and the moon as being white. Based upon the comments of my videos, so many of you remember the sun as being yellow. I remember the sun having more of a tint to it than it does now. One thing I have noticed is that it depends on where you are on Earth as to how the light filters down and the colors that it produces. I find here that I notice more of a green tint to everything, but that's probably because I'm surrounded by a lot of forests and undergrowth. When I see things that are filmed in Miami, Florida, there's often a yellowish tint to everything. And I'm not talking about filters that are placed on the cameras. I mean, it seems like how that often comes out. Pretty much anywhere tropical has a yellowish tint to it. Hawaii seems to have more of a blue tint. It's just something that I notice about the quality of light in each place. So I think that kind of factors into everything as well. It's not just the atmosphere. It's not just the colors that the sun produces or what we can determine or see. It's also based upon location and what's around us and how these colors interact with the sunlight, as well as the humidity and any other number of variation of factors. But overall, we remember the sun as being yellow. Here it says, seen from Earth, the sun can have many colors, from whitish yellow when it is high above the horizon to red when it sets or rises. Most people see it as yellow because the shortest wavelengths that we see as different shades of blue are being scattered by the Earth's atmosphere, coloring the sky blue. I've heard it said that the oxygen is what colors the sky blue. When our eyes combine all of those rainbow colors except for the blue ones, the color we see is yellowish. The lower toward the horizon the sun is, the more blue is scattered, and the average sun color shifts to red. Here it shows the different kind of suns, the white dwarfs, the red giants. I always thought ours was the yellow dwarf. This also says it depends on the temperature of the star and brightness, and this diagram is called the color magnitude diagram. But here the color or color index is a number representing a difference in stellar brightness in two chosen spectral ranges. So we range from red to orange to yellow to white. Silly me, I kind of wonder if there's maybe a blue sun out there somewhere. Stars are colored according to their temperatures, blue for hot stars, red for cool ones, to make them more informative and appealing. The sun and stars with similar temperatures are yellow when observed from the Earth, and that is why they are often represented with this color and called yellow dwarfs. However, you can also find diagrams for which stellar colors are kept, and in those diagrams the sun will be a white point. And they're blaming it on the diagram, and to remember that the choice of the color is up to the author and the palette used does not necessarily represent the real color of the stars. Remember to be careful when checking the sun's color. I think they forget that we have cameras. Universe today, what color is the sun? And they say that if you go to space, you'll actually find that it's white and not yellow. Talks about the prism, it goes into the temperatures and the colors of the other stars, pretty much saying the same thing the other article said. Why does the sun appear white? Because of its temperature. Great example here, it says that the hotter an object gets, the higher the frequency EMR it emits, and the EMR, of course, is the electromagnetic radiation. At certain temperatures, about 930 degrees Fahrenheit, the object begins to emit detectable amounts of red light, and so we say that the object has become red hot. Hotter still, and the frequencies of visible light emitted by the object slip further into the visible spectrum. Orange hot is next, then yellow. If you know the colors of the rainbow, you might think that green would come after yellow, but that's not quite right. Remember, a hot object emits photons of many different frequencies. By the time an object is hot enough to emit a significant number of green photons, it is also emitting from the entire visible spectrum. So it appears, you guessed it, white hot. our sun is in this temperature range, it actually does give off green light. In fact, the most dominant color of light emitted by the sun is yellowish green. If the sun is producing white light, why does it appear yellow? This one claims that the sun burns more yellow than it does any of the other colors, and that the Earth's atmosphere acts as a light filter. Some colors are more filtered than others. The sun is a yellow star, but the Earth's atmosphere makes the sun look more yellow than it appears than if you were to observe it from space, where it would appear more white than yellow. It talks about being in an airplane at or above 40,000 feet, it would also appear quite white. And if you were looking at the sun closer to noon, when it's at its highest and brightest, it will be whitest. It says that the sunlight has less air to travel through, so it won't be filtered as much. Remember, light appears white because all colors are equally reaching your eyes. So at noon, the sun appears to be more white and less yellow, closer to the way it really is. On Reddit, it appears that people think there was a Mandela effect with the sun, and that the sun is only closer to its normal color at sunrise and sunset. Has there been a reality change, or has the sun always been this way? And then they quoted the article that we just looked at. It's kind of funny. This one, a year ago, said that they've never really noticed the color of the sun, but that they do notice now that the stars in the night sky shine much brighter than before. Someone commented that they probably live in an area with less light pollution, and they say that they live in the city. And this person says, have you always lived in the same neighborhood in the same city? Yes, the same house. For me, I've lived in several different states, and I didn't really notice the stars until I moved down to Arizona, and we had wide open skies there. There was nothing to block my view for miles and miles, and I really started to get into star trail photography with my manual camera. It was a Canon AE1. Had a lot of fun with that. But for me, that was the first time I really noticed the stars, and they were really bright there. Here in Oregon, I'm actually kind of surprised. Come to think of it, I do see them pretty bright on clear nights. So I don't know. So then this person responds with, the planets are very, very bright. So that's probably what they're seeing is what they say. I don't know, I'm kind of seeing all the stars brighter. This sun thing is actually one of the oldest Mandela effects, maybe not in the sub, but in other forms. It's been talked about for years. This one shows proof in video form. Well, I don't have an account, can't look at that one. Someone referenced Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that had a yellow sun in there. And I remember showing that to you in the Double Suns Found in Movies and TV video. But then again, that was a sci-fi movie, so it's very possible that they could have altered it somehow. This person says the sun is actually green. This one says, I don't think this is a Mandela effect. I do remember the sun being yellow instead of white during my childhood back in the 90s, even in 2000 as well. Sometime in 2002, I started to notice the sun looking more white, but it wasn't blindingly bright as it is now. The sun suddenly became brighter on June 6, 2003. That's a very definitive date. It seems like the sun has gotten more bright in the last 5 years or so. Plus, I can feel the sun's intense rays burn in just about 15 minutes outdoors. That's another thing that you guys have mentioned. The intensity of the sun. The colors of the outdoors look different too as a result from the current white sun. Back when the sun was yellow, everything looked vibrant with a yellowish tint. Now everything looks dull gray and brighter. And that's one thing I was talking about before with the leaching of the colors. It just doesn't seem the same. This person agrees that it's definitely more, in quotes, jaggy than it used to be. And poetically, I would say that the summer now feels more like it's ignited by the light rather than bathed in it. No theory on this, just a personal observation made and shared over the last 15 years. Your time frame corresponds with my own experience, although always figured it to be city pollution coupled with weather trends or similar. I think that's what's happened to a lot of us is it's just been this slow change, this alteration that we didn't notice take place over a period of time. This person says the sun's light is similar to that of a welder's arc flash. I remember gazing straight into the sun in '92 at age 3. Not only was the sun yellow, it was more pleasing on the eyes, even in midday. Fast forward 23 years later, the sun is so bright, can't even see its spherical shape anymore. Its light is too intense to gaze at any time of the day, except sunrise and sunset. Even at those times, the sun is still bright to look at. The sunrises and sunsets don't look the same either, and I definitely feel strongly about that. I used to work at a resort when I was about 19, and I would take the guests out on a sunset walk with their cameras and do sunset photography with a group of people. In Arizona, was known for its beauty in the sunsets and the colors, especially if there's clouds in the sky. It would just be this massive amount of color. It was incredibly beautiful, and going back to visit now, I don't remember the sunsets quite being so faded as they are. And they go on to say that the sunsets look less golden than they used to. I agree. Triumphant comes back in and says, by jaggy, I meant that it's harsher on the skin. Rather than being warmed by the sun and then getting overexposed, it feels like you are being burned from it from the start. Being stabbed rather than soothed. Which of course could be down to my own skin changing or something. Anyway, it's something I've noticed and others had commented on, so I'm inclined to think that there is something to it. Jamie responded with, the sun's light has felt noticeably harsh in these last 5 years or so. I don't remember sunlight being this harsh before. The glare definitely hasn't gotten more intense. As for changes in the atmosphere, I do recall hearing about the ozone having a hole back in the late 90s to mid-2000s, until they changed it to global warming, and then more recently to climate change. Now they're getting into talking about ozone depletion and how that was observed from the 1970s. This is from NASA. The stratospheric ozone layer protects life on Earth by absorbing ultraviolet light, which damages DNA in plants and animals, including humans, and leads to skin cancer. Prior to 1979, scientists had not observed concentrations below 220 Dobson units, but in the early 1980s, through a combination of ground-based and satellite measurements, scientists began to realize that the Earth's natural sunscreen was thinning dramatically over the South Pole each spring. This large, thin spot in the ozone layer became known as the ozone hole. As far as we know, it's now over South America, but I often wonder if the Earth is moving and the atmosphere, does it stay put or does it move too? Do they move at different speeds? So does that mean that the ozone could be in several different places throughout the day? Is there anyone who's knowledgeable on that subject that knows the answer to this? Because I'm curious. Let's see. So this was definitely a theory that you guys set forth, that it's very possible that the ozone has changed, and so our view of the sun has changed as well. Now, bringing the chemtrails that we've talked about in the past, a lot of you have felt that that's what's causing this halo around the sun, as well as creating the sun dogs, and not something celestial going on. That too could have altered the color of the sun, shifting the colors into something that we see now. This is a good comment. It says that to test the colors and the changes that we've seen, it might be good to take the same equipment that we used to use, some of the older cameras, and photograph the sky and compare old photos with the new photos and see if there are any actual changes. For those of you that are older, is there any chance that you might be able to do this and let us know what your findings were? I'd be really grateful. I think that would be something we should definitely test. Like I said about the quality of light being different in different locations, this person also agrees from their travels. He says the prairies were more blue and white toned, and the St. Lawrence where he is now, where it has more of a yellowish hue, and he suggests that there might be a shift in the types of pollutants in the air that might have helped alter that as well. This person blames it on volcanic ash in the air. This one says it's always been whitish. This one says it was white for me a few days ago and more yellow for him today. Triumphant talks about an interesting documentary that he'd forgotten about called Global Dimming. I hadn't heard about that one. He puts a little transcript here. It says, narrator, working independently of each other, Leipert and Stanhill began searching through publications, journals, and meteorological records from around the world, and they both found the same extraordinary story. Between the 1950s and the early 1990s, the level of solar energy reaching the Earth's surface had dropped 9% in Antarctica, 10% in the USA, and by almost 30% in Russia, 16% in parts of the British Isles. This was a truly global phenomenon, and Jerry gave it a suitable name, global dimming. That kind of feeds into my theory that the sun is darkening, but I will admit that there could be so many contributing factors to this. It could be that this dimming is being caused on our end by all of these pollutants in our sky, such as the chemtrails and things, not being able to reach the ground as much as before. When I first started this channel, I was watching a lot of Steve Olson, and he was showing a lot of videos from Sechi and a number of other sites, and I was seeing something coming in to feed off of the sun. And it struck me right then that there was some sort of force at play that was draining it. And I had never doubted the validity of scientists saying that the sun would never die. You know that saying that they say that stars shine the brightest before they die out? They often attribute that to humans who burn brightest and then die young. Just kind of makes you wonder. Admittedly, I'm no expert, and the things that I've gone off of have been things that people have shared. Nothing, of course, by any governmental powers. I haven't seen anything from NASA or any of the sites that are run by experts. I haven't seen anything from those sources. I've just seen from other people, so I could well be wrong. And there are days where I think I was so stupid to put that video out, and I want to take it down, but then I just wait a few more days and I find something else, and I'm glad that I've left it there. So I've intentionally left that video and allowed it to just sit there, because I don't know. But the one thing that I do know is we have this nagging sense that things are changed. We know we don't have the full picture, but it's rather unsettling. This one says, why is the sun yellow but the moon is white? They used something to partially block their telescope's eyepiece, and the sun was very bright and appeared white. As I moved the paper farther away from the eyepiece, the image became larger and dimmer. I noticed that the color shifted slightly from white toward a very pastel shade of yellow. And then they said, let me get back to the question that you wrote. The moon is white even during the day, even though it is the same light from the sun that has been reflected by the moon's surface. This brings up another complication. Human eyes have two sorts of light-sensitive cells, which are called rods and cones. The cone cells can distinguish colors, but they can only work when struck by lots of light. The rod cells, on the other hand, respond to low levels of light, but provide no color information. If you don't believe me, go into a room without windows and look around. What color is the floor, the ceiling, the furniture? Then turn off the lights and look again. You won't see the same colors as clearly. Even the full moon is a pretty dim object. It reflects only about 7% of the whitish light that strikes it, and about the same as an asphalt road. Then that light gets spread out as it travels from the moon to the earth. By the time it reaches us, it is so feeble that it doesn't excite the cone cells in our eyes very much, since it is the black and white rod cells which provide most of the signals to our brains. We perceive the moon in shades of gray. Your final point. Clouds are white, yet they are reflecting light from the sun, is a good one. Puffy, cumulus clouds on a sunny day are certainly bright enough to excite the cone cells in our eyes, so we should be able to detect any hints of color in them. They do reflect equally well all the wavelengths of light striking them, most of which comes from the sun. So if the sun is really yellow and not white, the clouds should be yellow, but they aren't. And that goes to show that the sun itself is much more whitish than it is yellowish. They're all over the map with this. That actually is a pretty good question, and I don't think it has anything to do with dimming or anything else, because the sun is explained by the light refraction and reflection through the Earth's atmosphere, but the moon somehow seems to squeak by without that explanation. We can see red stars, green stars, blue stars in our night sky quite easily. Telescopes zoom in on planets and you can see color. Is there any kind of light play in that with the Earth's atmosphere? That's something that's not usually talked about. How would the sun be any different? Is it because it's brighter? I feel like I'm coming full circle here for myself. I've often talked about how light fascinates me. And I'd like to read to you an excerpt from You Are the Universe by Deepak Chopra and Menes Kafatos. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. It says, a huge number of things must come together perfectly to construct reality, and yet they do so completely out of sight. Think of sunlight. Obviously the sun can't shine unless stars exist. Since our sun is a medium-sized star floating around the center of the Milky Way, our home galaxy, there are few secrets left to discover about how stars form, what they are made of, and how light is produced in the incredibly hot cauldron at the core of a star. The secret lies elsewhere. As sunlight travels 93 million miles to Earth, it penetrates the atmosphere and lands somewhere on the planet. In this case, the only somewhere we're interested in is your eye. Photons, the packets of energy that carry light, stimulate the retina at the back of your eye, starting a chain of events that leads to your brain and the visual cortex. The miracle of vision lies in the mechanics of how the brain processes sunlight. That much is clear. Yet the step that matters the most, converting sunlight into vision, is totally mysterious. No matter what you see in the world, an apple, cloud, mountain, or tree. Sunlight bouncing off the object makes it visible. But how? No one really knows. But the secret formula contains sight because seeing is one of the basic ways of knowing that an object is real. What makes seeing totally mysterious can be summed up in a few undeniable facts. Photons are invisible. That's something I didn't know before. They aren't bright, even though you see sunlight as bright. The brain has zero light inside it, being a dark mass of oatmeal-textured cells, enveloped in a fluid not terribly different from seawater. Because there is no light in the brain, there are no pictures or images either. When you imagine the face of a loved one, nowhere in the brain does that face exist like a photograph. At present, no one can explain how invisible photons being converted to chemical reactions and faint electrical impulses in the brain creates the three-dimensional reality we all take for granted. Brain scans pick up the electrical activity, which is why an MRI contains patches of brightness and color. Something is going on in the brain, but the actual nature of sight is mysterious. One thing is known, however. The creation of sight is done by you. Without you, the entire world and the vast universe extending in all directions can't exist. Sir John Eccles, a neurologist and Nobel laureate, declared, "I want you to realize that there exists no color in the natural world, and no sound, nothing of this kind, no textures, no patterns, no beauty, no scent." What Eccles means is that all the qualities of nature, from the luxurious scent of a rose to the sting of a wasp, and the taste of honey is produced by human beings. It's a remarkable statement, and nothing can be left out. The most distant star, billions of light years away, has no reality without you, because everything that makes a star real, its heat, light, and mass, its position in space, and the velocity that carries it away at enormous speed, requires a human observer with a human nervous system. If no one existed to experience heat, light, mass, and so on, nothing could be real as we know it. He goes on to talk about how we are the creator of our own reality, and that the activity of the world around you in all its richness depends upon how you relate to it. So I find this to be very fascinating in the sense that what we're witnessing could be, in a very real sense, a spiritual thing. I just watched another video today by Graham Hancock, and it was called Fingerprints of the Gods. And at the very end of it, I think it was like 2 hours long, he says something to the effect of, he believes that the ancients knew that the planetary systems in our heavens would follow a processional route, and that every so often something happens that brings about a cataclysmic event here on Earth. It's funny that I had thought of this as well before I heard him say that, and he feels that our ancestors somehow managed to set something up, put something into place, so that when this countdown comes back around, we could be alerted to its changes, and thus become awakened, which means to me that they think that somehow we could stop it. Graham goes on to say that he felt that they were successful in this, and that's why we're so conscious to what's going on now in our skies. While I didn't provide an exact answer, I hope you enjoyed this video because this subject is vast and multifaceted, and for all we know, it could be a combination of all of these things. My opinion is that to solve a problem, you first have to admit that you have one. Determine all of its components, and then you're able to make an educated solution. Some of you ask how I come up with these topics. It's because the more that I dig, the more I realize that all of these things are interconnected. There's a fabric we're all part of, and it's written in DNA, in the electromagnetic spectrum. Perhaps we could call it resonance. I love to look at the scientific part of it, the logical, analytical side, as well as the metaphysical side of it, because I think that by combining the two, we gain a better picture. And with that, I'll end this video. Thanks so much, guys. Much love.